Your 8 GB of RAM laptop is already on borrowed time. By the end of 2026, it could struggle to run the basic security systems of a modern operating system. Not because it's broken, but because the rules of computing are changing. Behind the scenes, tech giants are racing to secure massive amounts of memory for AI, while everyday consumers are left fighting over outdated hardware. Millions of machines could become obsolete because the future was built without them. The next computer upgrade won't be about getting faster, it'll be about staying alive. When you buy a smartphone, a tablet, a laptop, or a computer, you expect it to work. Sure, it won't last forever, and you know that cheaper products might not be as efficient, but you spend money on these products thinking that they'll last for at least a few years before you need to find a replacement. It's not an unreasonable expectation, one that consumers across the world have been able to enjoy for generations. And then AI came along and changed everything. As AI's tendrils extend across industries and infiltrate almost every facet of modern life, the lifespans of standard computers are dropping quickly. In homes and offices around the world, there are hundreds of millions of laptops and desktop devices that are less than 2 years old. They look good, their keyboards aren't fading, their displays are crisp, and they boot up in a matter of seconds. Yet beneath their sleek exteriors, a death sentence has been issued. The countdown clock is about to hit zero. The numbers highlight the problem. There are around 2 billion machines in use today. They're used by people from all walks of life, for all manner of tasks, both personal and professional. Without them, their lives would fall apart. Yet the majority of those devices, more than 1.3 billion, are missing the neural processing units, or NPUs, or the base amount of system memory required to complete local next-generation AI tasks. These are the same tasks that tech companies are forcing on us. The tasks that are about to become essential, not optional, for anyone who wants to browse the internet and use the software they've relied on for decades. The entire baseline of functional computing has shifted forever. It's like waking up and finding that 3 lanes of a 4-lane highway have been permanently barricaded and are now exclusively reserved for a convoy of corporate VIPs. The rest of us are forced to battle it out over a single crumbling lane, trapped in a bottleneck that never ends. That's what's happening in the consumer computer market in 2026. And there's nothing you can do about it. You didn't make a mistake, you didn't buy broken hardware or download a system-destroying virus, yet your device has been shut off from the future of the internet. There was no warning, no compensation, and no mercy. It all boils down to something relatively simple: memory. That all-important component that has become rapidly one of the most valuable technological resources on the planet. As AI has become more prominent, the world's largest tech companies have started spending huge amounts of money on powerful AI infrastructure to run it. Memory is a vital piece of that infrastructure. Brands like OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon are buying it in droves. The impact of this record-setting RAM investment can be seen and felt in the pockets of millions of consumers the world over. Take the smartphone market. For years, this sector has followed a familiar pattern. Each year, the big brands release their latest devices. Each time, they promise incremental improvements, a faster processor, a better display, or a stronger camera. This is how they've justified their price hikes and encouraged users to abandon their old models in favor of the latest releases. But smartphones, just like laptops and computers, require RAM to function. The AI boom has sent the cost of memory soaring to never-before-seen highs. This has impacted the bill of materials, or BOM, for a smartphone released in 2026. A BOM is a list of all the materials and components that go into a device, along with the raw costs of those materials. In 2022, memory made up a small part of the overall cost. Since then, however, it has dramatically risen to the point where memory now accounts for almost 60% of the BOM in phones worth $400 or less. Even in mid-range devices, the BOM cost of memory has risen to around 40% as RAM effectively becomes a luxury good. This leaves smartphone manufacturers in a difficult position. They need to give people a reason to buy their latest devices, but are having to spend far more to make them. They can't pass all of those costs on to the consumer by raising the price of the device themselves. People have budgets. Not many are willing to hand over a few extra $100 for a phone that's more or less the same as last year's model. So they opt for a different tactic. A tactic that revolves around minimizing manufacturing costs by cutting corners as subtly as possible. They swap out camera sensors for smaller, simpler alternatives. They make the phone's frame from a cheaper, less durable material. They trade the battery for one with a shorter lifespan, but it is more affordable to source. They actively make their devices worse, using cheaper parts and materials to make changes that most people won't notice right away. On their own, any one of those changes would be almost invisible to the consumer. Together, they become a kind of a hidden tax. The spiraling costs of money have to be accounted for somehow, so even as the product gets worse, the price tag stays the same. The customer absorbs the added cost of RAM and ends up with an inferior phone. They might not realize that until a year or two down the line when it starts to freeze or fail and they're forced to buy another. It's not just affecting smartphones, it's happening all across the tech sector. Tablets, laptops, gaming PCs, and everything in between. The brands that make these products are no longer just competing with one another for RAM. They are competing with something bigger. Enormous, insatiable beasts that eat up energy and computing power far faster and in far greater quantities than anything the world has ever seen. AI data centers. These windowless concrete buildings are lined with hyper-efficient cooling towers that pump vast plumes of steam into the atmosphere, and inside each one are rows upon rows of servers. Each server is filled with thousands of AI accelerators, or GPUs, running around the clock, carrying out the complex mathematical computations required to train and run machine learning models. All of those accelerators rely on RAM to function. With every passing month, more of these data centers are springing up around the world, and they're getting bigger. It's the physical embodiment of the AI arms race. It doesn't stop. It continues to hurtle forward at breakneck speed. There's a constant, unrelenting push toward the next big thing, the next model, the next leap in intelligence, the next stage of digital evolution. The only way to achieve any of those objectives is growth. Bigger data centers, more servers, more power, more memory. Companies like Microsoft, Meta, and Alphabet want to dominate the market and release the AI tools that millions or even billions of people want to pay for. To do that, they have to stay one step ahead of their rivals. Because in a race as ruthless as this, even the tiniest setback can spiral into a multi-billion-dollar loss. They have no choice but to purchase all the memory they can afford as quickly as humanly possible, and that's exactly what they're doing. The numbers speak for themselves. Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, and Alphabet are set to allocate $725 billion in combined capital expenditures toward their AI ambitions in 2026 alone. It's a huge amount of money, and it's only going to increase. Experts estimate the combined capex for the biggest AI brands will reach a whopping $1.2 trillion in 2027, rising to $1.4 trillion in 2028. Compare that sort of spending with people just trying to buy a new device, like a family looking for a new computer, or a student on a tight budget searching for a laptop they can carry around campus. Around the world, there are millions of people in the market for a new computer, but the prices they pay are no longer influenced by conventional supply and demand. Instead, they're being controlled by a handful of mega corporations. The technological elite are leveraging their almost infinite cash reserves to outbid the consumer market for silicon chips. They're buying up global factory capacity, leaving retail brands and their customers to fight over the scraps. This is the brutal truth of the AI arms race. It's not just about companies competing with one another to get ahead of the game and release the next big AI asset. It's about those same companies carrying out a violent assault on the consumer computer market. And the worst part of it all is that there is no end in sight. This isn't a temporary shortage, it's not a blip. Things aren't going to simply sort themselves out and get back on track. AI only moves in one direction. Models are only going to get smarter and more demanding, and they're going to hoover up resources year after year. As long as that continues, these companies will keep on consuming memory in record-setting amounts, leaving everyone else in the dust. The scale of their greed is only getting worse, because these companies don't accept the classic kinds of RAM you would find in an everyday laptop or an entry-level smartphone. They want the best of the best, high-bandwidth memory, or HBM. HBM produces incredible speeds by stacking multiple memory chips together, creating a level of performance far beyond traditional RAM. The gap between advanced AI enterprise systems like NVIDIA H100 clusters and the 8 gigs of DDR5 memory found in a typical consumer laptop is massive. The best HBM products score at least 50 times higher on performance benchmarks compared to regular RAM. It's like having a supersonic 5th-generation fighter jet racing against a toddler on a plastic tricycle. This has created a new technological hierarchy. The largest companies can process trillions of data points in fractions of a second, while everyday users are left with machines that struggle with basic AI tasks. That's why HBM has become the backbone of modern AI processors and supercomputers. But in technology, every breakthrough comes with a cost. For HBM, that cost is measured in silicon. Producing a single gigabyte of HBM for AI systems requires around 3 times more silicon capacity than making standard DDR5 memory. So when a factory shifts its focus toward HBM to chase the AI boom, regular RAM production gets squeezed. These two markets can't grow side by side. Every piece of silicon dedicated to high-end AI memory is silicon that can't be used to make RAM for millions of everyday devices like laptops, phones, and tablets. The result is a brutal trade-off. The AI industry is consuming the resources that powered the consumer market. And when you look at the profits involved, it's easy to understand why memory manufacturers are choosing to chase the HBM orders. In today's market conditions, manufacturers can easily have operating margins in excess of 50%. Some are even being forecast to see their margins rise close to 80%. That's a massive difference compared to the much slimmer margins these companies had to cope with when making regular RAM before the AI boom really began. The problem is, this isn't a market with dozens of companies making different choices. The global memory industry is controlled by 3 giants: Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron. Together, they produce around 93% of all memory chips. That gives them enormous control over where the industry goes, and they're choosing the path that makes them the most money. They can cater to a small elite market rather than worrying about pleasing the masses. Even when their CEOs acknowledge the shortfalls in the DDR markets, they have continued to pour resources into expanding HBM production. Their loyalties lie with big tech. Of course, they won't admit that they're abandoning the general public or leaving millions of consumers to fight for the scraps. Instead, they'll talk about diversifying their product lineup or expanding into emerging markets. It is boring business speak to cover up the consequences of their decisions. But no matter how much they dress it up, the end result is the same. The HBM market gets bigger and richer, all at the expense of the DDR market. The likes of Meta and Microsoft get the massive stacks of chips they need to build bigger data centers and train their AI models. Families, students, and struggling professionals have to make do with less. This isn't a supply chain hiccup or an act of God. It's not some evil master plan either. It is a cold, calculated, entirely legal corporate strategy driven by the oldest and purest bedrock of the business world, the pursuit of profit. During the final quarter of 2025, SK Hynix saw a 66% increase in revenue compared to the same period a year earlier. Operating profits also surged by 137% over that same span of time. It was a similar story at other big memory firms. They didn't go all in and starve the DDR market entirely, but they made a big enough investment to send their profits and their shareholder satisfaction rates to record levels. The ugly byproduct of this strategy, however, is a ruthless reallocation of global resources away from the working and middle classes. While the market evolves to optimize yields for every single square millimeter of silicon in existence, a memory famine has swept across large parts of the world, and in the wake of that famine, a frightening new reality is beginning to emerge. A divided reality, a digital caste system, a world in which 2 contrasting extremes exist in a state of chaos. On the one hand, there are the hyper-advanced AI systems training on never-ending sets of data, chewing through resources. As these systems grow smarter and stronger, their capabilities increase exponentially, to the point where almost no task is impossible. At the other end of the spectrum sits the consumers, you. The everyday people who are looking for devices that let them do the things they need, but are increasingly being made to pay higher prices for lower quality machines. To make matters worse, most of these machines aren't just falling slightly behind, they're heading toward obsolescence. AI is being pushed into everyday devices and workplaces. That leaves millions of people with basic laptops and mid-range PCs that can't keep up with the wave of AI-powered apps and operating systems. So they'll be left with only one option: the cloud. That same cloud owned and operated by those very same megacorps. The same cloud they power with all of that silicon and other computing components that they steal from the rest of the world. People will either buy an expensive AI-ready machine, or they'll pay tech giants monthly just to use basic features. That's the future we're moving toward. It's not just about big tech using billion-dollar budgets to dominate the market, it's about turning one-time purchases into endless subscriptions. It's a slow shift toward digital serfdom, where people no longer truly own their computers. Instead, they become portals for accessing services and renting digital lives from the same companies that built the system. These are the harrowing consequences of the AI boom. The tech giants are only going to become more powerful, while the people gradually lose whatever control, choice, and freedom they once had. They told you AI would transform the world and unlock opportunities for all. They just forgot to mention the price you'd have to pay for that transformation. Now people are starting to see the real cost, and it's already too late to stop it. The AI bubble is growing and affecting us daily, but is it sustainable? Watch $115 billion burn rate, the AI bubble just popped, to find out where it all ends, or click on this video.